We go now to presidential candidate Dr. Ben Carson taking part in a town hall meeting last night, answering some questions from voters, and it was hosted by pollster Frank Luntz. Take a look.
I want a word or phrase to describe Ben Carson. I'm going to start with you. We're going to go down the row.
Peaceful.
Distinguished.
Brilliant.
Sincere.
Humble.
Intelligent.
Trustworthy.
Honest.
How much better can you get than that?
Well, no one said handsome.
What have these voters not heard from you that you would want them to know with the vote only a few hours away?
I would want them to know that I'm not a politician and I'm a member of We the People, just like everyone else. I have no desire ever to be associated with the political class or to be controlled by them.
What do you think? So what do you want to know from him?
Can you handle Washington, D.C., though?
Well, let me put it this way.
And you can put your dolls down.
Some of the things that I've had to handle in my life have been incredibly more difficult than Washington, D.C., to the point that I don't even get interested in doing anything unless people say it's impossible.
I wish that you had more fire in your belly. I want to see some unction. I don't want you to be ugly to the people, but I want to feel fire, because I feel like if you're running against some of these guys, you need that fire.
Do you guys agree with that?
I appreciate what Dr. Carson said last night when he mentioned where you had like 800 children come in. You didn't get louder to get control. You got softer.
Yeah.
Louder doesn't mean smarter, so I appreciate the fact that you respect me as a voter enough not to yell at me.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is I used to have a razor temper, and I would go off the handle, and I would go after people with all kinds of things. And it was really God who cured me. But he made me into a very calm person. I came to understand that to lash out at people, to punch somebody in the face, was not a sign of strength. It was a sign of weakness. I also came to understand that it's a sign of selfishness if you're always angry and lashing out, because it's always about me, my, and I.
What do you do to like our foreign policy, like rebuild our military? Because I believe that's like really, we pretty much set the pace for the world, I feel like, because we are like one of the leaders in the world, and being president, you pretty much can oversee the world, and I think we need to lead from a position of strength with a strong military. What are you going to do to rebuild our military? Well,
you have to have a president who understands that if we get the military wrong, nothing else matters, particularly in the world that we live in right now. It's a very, very dangerous world.
Yeah. Am I undecided?
You were for President Obama sending special forces to Syria, and I'm a veteran, and my husband's a 21-year Army veteran. I'm highly opposed to that. So explain to me how you could support President Obama on one issue and then say that you're against him on how he's handled the military as a whole.
Well, bear in mind, one of the reasons that we were able to take Sinjar back after ISIS has taken it is because we put our special ops people in with the Kurds, and they were able to restrict the access into Sinjar, which softened the target, and then they were able to go in, backed up by our Air Force, and take that city back. That's what I'm talking about, utilizing our special forces in conjunction with the ground forces that are there. Now that becomes an easy thing if we do things the way we should. We should have strong relationships with all of the people in that region, because it's in their best interest to keep the place out of the hands of ISIS.
Do you support putting U.S. troops on the ground in Syria?
That's not exactly what I just said. I said putting our people in with their people. I think their people have to be the main one. There are several Syrians who are moderate Sunnis who are...
How do you tell the difference between the moderates and the extremists? Because I don't know how you tell them by asking them a question. They're not going to tell you the truth. You're just basically putting my husband and others in danger when you don't know what the enemy really looks like.
Well, for instance, obviously you can never be 1,000% sure that this person doesn't have some connection, but you can be generally sure from their geography, where they live, and what they've been doing. But my point is, we will never be able to control that area by ourselves. We have to have allies in order to do it. And one of the terrible things that we did with the Iranian deal is we put a dagger in the heart of all of our allies throughout that region, and then we have the nerve to go and ask them to be our boots on the ground.
You guys
that makes
agree
no
with that?
sense.
Yes. Yes.
Final, where are my undecided voters here? Okay, very quickly, what's your question?
We've talked a lot about immigration.
how are you going to solve the Syrian refugee problem?
What's your question?
How would you defeat your Democratic opponent?
Where are my other undecideds? I want to do two more. What's your question?
The question is on the issue of national security. Will you get the terrorists off of Twitter, and what will you do about the Apple problem?
Last one.
My question is about the Federal Reserve. It's all nice to talk about the military and how we rebuild it, and I'm in total favor of that. But we are $19 trillion in debt, and they're going to print more money because they're not getting the results that they want, and the world economic situation is a mess. How can you change that and enable us to make our military
You only get to
strong
answer one of those.
Okay, they're all such juicy questions. I want to answer them all. The Federal Reserve is a terrible problem, no question about that. But we have put the Federal Reserve in a very difficult position because our government continues to drive the debt up. And of course, it leaves them in a position of having to suppress the interest rates, which destroys the American dream because people can't put money in their savings account and see it grow and then retire with a nice nest egg. We have to stop manipulating money. We talk about the Chinese. I think we're going to have to attach our money to something. You know, we detached from the gold standard in 1971, and it's just free for all. This makes absolutely no sense, and it's one of the reasons that we're moving toward the economic cliff. And a lot of people say it's just numbers and they don't mean anything. I'm sure that's what the 17th century Spaniards said, and the 18th century French, and the 19th century English. You know, they all say the same thing before their collapse. Why can't we learn from these things that happen?
You guys agree?
I agree.